In this episode, we'll be learning how to promote our health and faith through our guest ministry of Serenity and Health. She is a daughter, a sister, wife, doctor, mother, in that order, and she's also the author of a book entitled Pilgrimage, a Doctor's Healing Journey. Welcome to the show, Donna. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm terrific. Thank you so much for having me, Toby. This should be fun.
Yes, it will be so much fun. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode for a soulful mirror talk. I'm looking forward to learning so much from you, like from your book and from your journey of life. It has been so inspiring what you've gone through, and I really appreciate the fact that you reveal, this journey, this healing journey with the world through your book also. You went through this healing journey from an emotionally traumatic marriage, and now you're in a way better place than ever before. Would you like to share the story with us and also tell us the inspiration behind the book Pilgrimage?
Well, the name of the book is Pilgrimage because that was just a perfect name for my journey. It's a long story, Toby. I'm going to break it into pieces.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was a doctor for many years, but I married young, had children, and the turning point of my life uh, came about when I became really desperate and unhappy in my marriage. I got married quickly. As I said, I was young. I was working as a physician, working too much to do, in retrospect, a good job at home, and we had very poor communication with my husband, and the home became very dysfunctional. I became extremely worried about my children because there was shame and yelling, and it was just a very hard environment. But the problem was I was always in a hurry. I was always busy. I did not have insight into anything. It was just so easy to not have time to deal with it. And because I didn't take time and I didn't have insight, I just kind of blamed him. But it got to the point where I was just and key point, I had let go my childhood faith because of time pressures, busyness. So I had no active faith life. And this all led me to a point of desperation. I knew I could not continue. I had been to the divorce lawyer. I did not want to get a divorce. I did not want to stay married. I wanted to protect my children, but there were no answers. And at that point, I was, led me to my knees, and I finally just gave up. And that's when I started my adult journey as a Christian. I turned to God and I just gave up. I surrendered. I said, this wasn't like a momentary thing. This was like a process. It was extremely difficult. But eventually it came very clear to me that God wanted me to stay married. There was a moment that I knew that was the path. That's what I had to do. And I had to trust him with the children. I had to trust him that things would be okay because it didn't seem like they would be okay if I stayed married. And anyway, that's the path I followed. Things did get better in our home. We had some medical issues with the children. They're teenagers by this time. But within a few years after that, my husband got leukemia and died. And so I just had a lot of reshuffling in my head to figure out how I had gotten into that mess, what I had done. And of course, by this time, my spiritual life meant a great deal to me. My relationship to God meant a great deal to me. So I was spending more time. I was listening for a change, right? And, I changed medical specialties so that I could work in primary care. And I kind of started an intentional plan to learn and understand and heal myself and grow and figure it out, kind of. And at this time, my children were out of the home in college. And I started practicing primary care in the inner city. And that was further of my change in thinking about health. Because I worked with the immigrants, Toby, new immigrants, fresh fresh in the country,
mm,
no English yet.
mm,
And I worked with homeless people. I actually lived at a medical recovery facility for homeless people called Christ House. And so, I saw people's health devastated by stress.
mm.
But then I saw their recovery come about when they started having hope, just to see somebody heal of all their ailments, because now they finally have hope that for their future. And
Yeah.
at some point I can even describe some examples. It just was so startling. But anyway,
Mm,
all of this together helped me to understand that having a relationship with God, trying to trust God, trying to listen, trying to take some time to listen to God, to listen to myself, to my body, to listen to somebody else,
mm,
um, trying to get to know who I was, because I was very, even though by this time I was, 50 years old, I don't think I knew really who I was, really, or
mm.
what
Yeah.
motivated me during all those years. So this whole
Mm,
process continued. Writing a memoir is a really soul searching proposition, and it led me actually to start seeing a psychotherapist, because I just couldn't put things together. And
yeah.
so the upshot of the whole thing is that I do have a better understanding of myself, of the
Mm,
situations from how I was raised that
yeah.
programmed me in certain directions that weren't always healthy. I didn't even know. Now I understand more.
Mm,
And how
yeah.
faith can, me turning to God and just trying to trust and do my best and putting all this together for myself, made me more healthy and happy and peaceful. And that's why I started this ministry called Serenity and Health, because I
And
wanted to
health.
put all this together, all the various practices I had done for myself and in my
Mm,
studies about health of body, mind, and spirit, and how they all go together.
mm.
And that's how we can find abundant health and be happier and healthier. That's what we all want, right? A
Yeah.
happy, holy, healthy life.
Of course.
So
Of
that's kind
course.
of
Yeah.
a slightly rambly
Yeah.
version.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for giving us an insight into what you experienced. I'm so sorry for the loss of your husband and everything that happened. But I'm so thankful also that you took all of this and you're helping it to help people. You're using it to help people basically to become better people, to have more healthy life, happier life also. Thank you for the work that you do, the awesome work that you do. And you talked about, at your lowest point, like when you were on your knees, basically, you found God again. You found you connected back with God. So how can you teach? How can we, at our lowest states, how can we build trust with God and build back a relationship with God? When we are at that point where we've given up everything, basically, we've given up hope, we've given up on life or on
Right.
a marriage, for example. In your case, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people go through periods like that, right? Where they're at their wits' end. They're stuck in a bad place. It could be a bad job, a toxic boss, abuse, or addiction in the families, poverty. There's so many problems that people go through. War. Oh my goodness.
Mm,
And my problem, and this is the first message, I never took a moment to think about God or myself or to listen or to slow down. I thought I always had to be busy. This is one of the biggest
mm,
things I learned about myself, that I was so programmed to work, to be productive. This was like the number one virtue that somehow my brothers and I took from our home life. Our parents and our grandparents were products of the Depression in the United States, and work was everything. And we all learned that, right? But at great personal sacrifice and to my family. So if you're in some sort of stuck, awful place, big or little, you, even though it may seem impossible to find a little time for God or for yourself, you have to. You have to find quiet time, or else you may not find a solution. I think it's the first step. I mean, even if it's just getting up 10 minutes earlier and maybe hiding in the bathroom if that's the only place you can get quiet. Even if it's just 10 minutes a day, I'm absolutely convinced that that is a start that can help you see a way forward, to help you see what other steps you might be able to take. It's not a quick process. It's not easy, but I
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
the first thing. And in that clarity, you might find out that you need to get help. Or maybe you've ignored God like I did. Maybe you need to commit to that relationship and get help. I mean, God is first, but we can't. I don't think we're meant to be on this journey alone.
You're right. And you talked about listening and mindfulness, in helping you regain that relationship with God and also your health also and your marriage and everything that came into place afterwards. So can you teach us how to listen properly? Can you tell us the importance of mindfulness in our journey of healing and in our journey of restoration?
You hit the nail on the head with that question, because that was one of my biggest problems. And I think many people share this with me. We are so busy up in our heads, planning, organizing, thinking about the past, worrying about the future, that we are not in the present moment and we're not listening. I mean, I look back and I feel bad. I probably could have been a much better doctor if I learned how to listen better, and a better mother and a better husband, right? I don't think I even knew I wasn't a good listener. I mean, I know I wasn't. I wasn't aware, right? Because it somehow in our busy life, I think for some of us, maybe depending on personality, it takes some effort to stay in the moment and be able to really embrace each moment in the present and listen. So I'll tell you how what helped me, because it surprises me. It's not what
Yes.
I expected. When I started my recovery, so to speak, and my
Yeah.
quest for knowledge and understanding, and I was starting to set up and research for Serenity and health, I did a lot of research about mindfulness and meditation. And they were both very foreign to me. And I probably reacted a little negatively, to be honest, like, ooh, like it's some woo woo new age thing or something. I don't know. And, but what happened was that over time, I developed two prayer practices, which I think have been transformative for me. And they have everything to do with mindfulness. Okay. And I'll tell you both, because I mean, I love to talk about this topic because it made such a huge difference in my life. And people use different language to describe the same thing I'm going to describe, but I'm just talking about my own experience, how it worked for me. All right. So I researched meditation, and it was found in all cultures, all religions for forever and ever, and it always seemed to help people. They wanted to do it, right? This kind of mystified me. And when I read current scientific research, like on the meditating monks and yogis, and to see the brain changes, the physiological and anatomical changes in the brain and the brain function that actually changed and made people more open, less reactive, lower blood pressure. Like, whoa, this is pretty cool. So I, in further research, realized there was deep roots in Christianity, even for meditation, which I was not aware of, because I never learned anything about a prayer that didn't involve words or thoughts or music or something. So this is a Christian meditative prayer. It's a prayer without words, without thoughts, without feelings. It's just putting yourself in the presence of the Lord. It's just a surrender. And so I started practicing what's called centering prayer, which is lots of information available. Maybe we can give the link. It's just specific way of the steps you follow to accomplish this. Basically, it's sitting quietly and saying yes to our Lord for a committed period of time every single day. And I got to say, for somebody like me to sit still, not just me, a lot of people, I think, to just sit still and in the beginning, it seems like do nothing, seemed like an incredible waste of time.
It
I
could be
had stuff
difficult,
to
yeah.
do. I got stuff on my list. What are you talking about? Plus, the brain
Yeah.
just goes in overdrive if you sit like that. So
Yeah.
it was a process to adjust myself to be able to do that. But I realized what a great prayer in so many respects, because I mean, I ended up having to surrender that time to God. It was my time. I had stuff to do, but no, I was going to surrender it and just trust God that this time with him was more important than my stuff. So that the prayer has a lot of different benefits, slowing down your brain, those physiological changes, but also just getting used to letting go of your will for his for a short amount of time.
Yeah.
And the second prayer practice I call God-centered mindfulness, because this mindfulness stuff also kind of perplexed me. I mean, you tell somebody you're supposed to stay in the moment. Well, of course we're in the moment, right? We're here. It's kind of confusing when you first hear about it. I don't know. Were you confused when
Yeah.
you first learned about mindfulness?
Of course. I
Yeah,
was
like
like,
what is
what's
it?
it all about?
It doesn't even.
Yeah.
But then I saw this book. Isn't it wonderful how a book at the right time can change your life? So I
Of
happened to
course.
see this book in a bookstore. It was called Sacrament of the Present Moment. And it was written in the early 1800s by a French Jesuit priest, de Caussade, Jean-Pierre de Caussade. And it's a real thin book, but he talks in kind of flowery, repetitive language, which is so beautiful, though, about how each present moment is like this gift, and we have the divine action here. And if you just embrace that moment, that's where God is. And you have nothing else in the whole world to worry about. You have everything you could possibly want in this moment, as long as you are there and not in your head about the disagreement yesterday or worried about the financial problem for the future or whatever. Anyway,
Yeah.
I decided I wanted to have some sort of mindfulness that was like he was talking about, and so I decided I would have a short prayer I would say many times during the day. Now, I didn't invent this. There's a famous prayer called the Jesus prayer, that people say, but this is what I did. I decided I would say, "My Lord and my God," whenever I thought about God, whenever I thought about my prayer, or whenever I really needed God during the day, like when I started to get irritated, upset, stressed, angry, judgmental about somebody, irritated at the red light, whatever. Whenever I was losing it, even just a little bit, I would try to remember to say that prayer. And in the beginning, it didn't go too well. I kept forgetting, or I would say it after I had this long tirade in my head about something. But a miracle happened. I'm not kidding. I've never had this happen in my life. Within 6 or 8 weeks, that prayer just automatically started popping into my brain when I needed
Yeah.
it. When I was just starting to get that feeling, or to be looking at that person with negative thoughts, or, being jealous of something, or just, all the crazy thoughts we have. And the
Yeah.
more you are interested in improving yourself in this way, the more you are aware of all that traffic in your head. So anyway, that's why this prayer came a lot. It still comes a
Yeah.
lot. So during the day, just dozens of time, I'll just in my head say, "My Lord and my God." I'll take a breath, and I'll be
Yeah.
in a much better place to deal with whatever the situation is. And I just
Yeah.
think these two prayer practices and people can do it in whatever way they want, or their culture, their faith tradition. They're not unique to Christianity at all. But I think this kind of process is really imperative in our quest, to lead healthy, full, abundant lives.
Lives.
Because if we're always up in our head, we're not going to get there.
Mm. So all you say is, my Lord and my God, and
My Lord and my
that's all.
God. St.
Yeah.
Thomas said that when he wouldn't believe that Jesus had been in the upper room. And
Ah,
finally he
yes.
believed, and he said, my Lord and my God.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
And once you say that, you're able to let go of that jealousy or negative thoughts, and
Yeah.
it's
You ought to
yeah.
try it. I mean, in the beginning, I made sticky notes, and I would have I would say it many times just on purpose for no reason. My Lord and my God, my Lord and my God. But it just happened. I mean, God helps us. If we make a little effort, God helps us.
What do you do when your mom has had Alzheimer's for more than a decade and you suddenly become her primary caregiver? When I went looking for answers, I ended up creating a podcast. Welcome to Fading Memories. I'm your host, Jen. This podcast offers advice, wisdom, and hope from caregivers who have lived the experience and survived to tell the tale. Think of us as your caregiver best friend. We discuss all things caregiving, self-care, aging well, brain health, and have fun along the way. You might not be able to call us at 2 a.m. to vent, but we're here for you anyway. Tune in weekly for inspiration to help you manage your caregiving journey. Find Fading Memories wherever you get your podcasts and also on YouTube.
That's true. You're right. You're right. So for someone out there who is asking, okay, Donna, you've explained so much, and I understand, but I want to know how my faith is attached to my health, or my faith is attached to my
Okay.
well-being or happiness in life. How would
Okay.
you explain this?
Okay. There's like 4 or 5 different ways that it's very specifically related. One is, if you believe in God and you believe that God gave you the gift of life and your body, then, and to use Christian language, we are stewards of our gifts and talents and our bodies. It's a gift, right? Then I think, as Christians, and perhaps other people of other faiths believe the same, that we have a responsibility to care for that. We have a responsibility to think about our habits, the way we live our lives, what we eat, what we drink, what we smoke, our exercise, our stress level. We think about all of that
Yes.
and adjust it if it's off whack. Because, 70% of all chronic illness can be either cured or improved by changing these kind of habits about eating, drinking, smoking. I mean, that's just pretty astounding.
That's true. Yeah.
And so, as a Christian, I feel I have a responsibility, and I like to remind other people that I think we all have a responsibility. I think God wants us to be as healthy as we can. We don't want to get nutty about it, but we can better do His will and serve others and suffer less if we do some basic things with our health habits. And so that's a direct link. And then, you can, to accomplish that, because saying it is not doing it, right?
That's true. Yeah.
You can use a church community, groups. I was fortunate enough to be remarried, Toby. So my husband and I, we laugh that we're God buddies. We try and help each other,
Yeah.
or a friend, a neighbor, a walking partner. There's so many groups involved with health that you know so healthy habits is a huge part of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Another is this whole stuff of what's in the head that I talked about with my prayer
Yeah.
practices,
Yes.
because that's where, stress just eats us up.
Mm.
It's estimated that at least 2/3 of the types of complaints that people have when they go in to see their doctor
Mhm.
are stress related. And that was my experience. So, I mean, I'm
Mm.
talking about, and when I say stress related, I mean that the stress either caused the problem or aggravates it. And I mean, the list is really long. Um,
Mm.
Headaches, backaches, insomnia, anxiety, stress, high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, and the list is a very long one
Mm.
of conditions that are aggravated by stress. And so, if you have an act of faith and you believe in God
Mm.
and you try to surrender the junk and just do the best you can and trust Him with the rest,
Mhm.
based on my own experience and my observations, I think people will have less stress. And if you have less stress, you're going to be healthier.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
um, the last point that connects faith and health. So, talk about habits and quieting the
Yes.
mind and
Mhm.
this helping to deal with stress. The
Yes.
last one, general category, has to do with something called resilience.
Resilience.
So, if you are, this is to use a scientific term, I guess, if you're resilient, you are going to adapt to stresses better. You're going to be healthier. It's like an equilibrium.
Mm.
And there are certain ways of living that increase resilience.
Mm.
And some examples are people that have like a meaning in their life, a purpose, a community,
Mm.
relationships. They're bound together. They know what they're about and what they're trying to accomplish. Um, or they may have a mission, a volunteer activity that
Mm.
they give and they receive. All of these kinds of activities.
Mm.
The arts is another big one. Creativity.
Yeah.
All of these kinds of things build resilience and then contribute to health. Well, clearly, if you have a meaningful faith community that helps you move on your journey and you're able to help others on their journey, either mentally or physical needs or whatever, you know, all of that contributes to resilience and therefore contributes to health. So there's a lot of rewards isn't that we get from our faith. I just think our
Yes.
dear God is very good. Let me say one thing though. It's
Mhm.
not like if you do it right, you're guaranteed health.
Mm.
This is not anything, and I don't want anybody to think I'm speaking of what's called the prosperity gospel. You pray
Mm.
right, you pray enough, you do it right, then you'll be healthy or rich or something. No, it's not like that. There's still going to be illness, there's still going to be accidents. We're all going to die.
Mm.
But for sure, if you know who you are in life and what you're trying to accomplish and you trust God and you have relationships, it's possible to have an illness and suffer a bit less than if you're just thrashing and angry and desperate and alone.
That's true. Yeah.
So
Yes.
that's how I look at it.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. I love the fact that you talked about resilience and how faith helps us, on this part also. And
Yeah.
I believe our faith could also help us to heal from our childhood traumas. Did they help you in some ways, sweet, from from how your parents brought you up, and that working hard, stress and anxiety that comes with that also? Did your faith help you with that?
Oh yeah, the childhood stuff is really big. And um when I was working in Washington, I always wondered why the people had so many illnesses. I never saw so many illnesses in one person. I mean, and it was just common for someone to have 6 or 8 or 10 diagnoses of major problems, and I was thinking like, whoa. But a few years after that, I learned at the time I thought, well, it's just stress, and I'm sure that's definitely a factor. But I learned about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. Do you know what that is? Have you heard
No,
of that?
please. No.
Okay, well, if you don't mind, I'll explain it because it's really important.
Yes,
All right.
please.
So ACEs, stands for adverse childhood experiences or events. I forget what the E is anyway, one of the two.
Mm.
And that term came about after a very large study in the United States, done at a very large healthcare system. And what they did is they talked to adults and had them complete surveys about their memories of childhood, their own childhood.
Mm.
And they ended up with a questionnaire with 10 areas looking for experiences that the person remembers that would indicate any kind of abuse, neglect, hunger, violence, witnessing violence, domestic abuse, drug abuse, divorce was one of them, for example. Um, and the test, the survey, if you had a really idyllic childhood, your score would be 0 or 1. And if you had all kinds of problems, it would be 10. And then they correlated those scores with their health as adults. So that makes sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What they found is that those, the higher the score, the more physical health problems, mental health problems, and behavioral health problems that the adults had by huge numbers. Addiction, mental illness, obesity, diabetes, all the diseases, suicide, just it was, and that's what I was seeing in Washington, D.C., because I saw so many poor people that had been raised under a very difficult circumstances or moving across country, immigrants, just difficult traumatic events for children. And now the research continues to determine what we can do to lessen the occurrence, lessen those events, and help the children that might be at risk, but also hugely to help those adults who now find themselves with a lot of problems. And then they read this article and it says, oh my gosh, my score is 10. I'm messed up. But it's a hopeful piece of news, okay? Because knowing that doesn't mean they're permanently messed up. It means they have to recognize that was what happened to them. But by taking specific steps, there are ways to heal yourself. And it's all this whole mind-body medicine thing, some sort of spirituality, some sort of you've got to build resilience and relationships, but just small steps in that direction, like maybe joining an art club or starting a walking program, or maybe somebody never paid attention to their interest in God. Maybe they need to go back to God. Maybe they need to see a therapist and really sort this out a little bit. Or maybe they have alcoholism and they've never gone to an AA meeting. You do have to take steps to make change, but you can start really small and it will work. Just little small steps. So the
Yes.
ACEs are a big thing, and now that I've mentioned this term, I'm sure you'll see it. There's a big push for schools, churches, healthcare organizations to be aware of this, to give what we call trauma aware care. So not to be so judgmental about people. You don't know what they went through. You know,
Yeah.
somebody may be acting like a quote difficult patient, but it's not fair to judge. You don't know how they started out in life, you know? So by being more sensitive, more aware, more respectful, there can be healing. Blogs on the topic, because I think it's really critical. One is just has information explaining this. And the second one, after you take your own score, then you have to deal with where you are. Like, for example, well, here's an example. I took my test. I took it. My score's low. I had good parents. They weren't perfect, but they were really good parents, right? So my score is like 0 or 1. But I'm really aware that somehow the way I was raised, I still had some really distorted ways of thinking about life that I carried with me from childhood. And it took, I'm still working at this, intense need to overwork, or this difficulty in always being direct about my needs, that sort of thing. Anyway, so for me, I look at that and I say, oh, my score is low. But then I think about my children. Their score is not as low. Now I have to deal with that, because one of the reasons their score is not so low is because I was part of a very long marriage, which in retrospect, included emotional abuse. And I just stayed there. I didn't do anything. So, and then other people have high scores to deal with and have to accept that. That's how life is, right?
Yes,
And
you're
now
right.
it's their path to grow. And there are ways and references about steps they can take to heal.
Yes. I'm going to place the link to these articles in the
Yes.
show note of this episode once I get it from you, Donna.
Okay.
And I encourage everyone who is listening to just, click on the links, read them, and find out their scores.
Yes. No, I just think it's extremely valuable. I mean, yeah, in many different directions. You know how the study came about? It's so fascinating. It was just a doctor, a regular old doctor in a large medical organization called Kaiser Permanente in the United States. And he was working in a weight loss clinic. Okay?
Yeah.
And he realized that a lot of times they would lose weight and then they would gain it all back quickly. And eventually he had a long conversation with one of the women. And she did lose all the weight. And then she gained it all back. And she explained to him that she had been sexually abused as a child. And I think she was fairly, as I recall, articulate and kind of had some fear about making herself attractive to a man all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And felt more safe with the weight. That was the conclusion of maybe it was in the subconscious, our bodies do these kinds of things. But anyway, the doctor, after learning that conversation, started asking other patients, and come to find out the frequency of sexual abuse in that weight loss clinic was sky high. And he just got to thinking about, wow, I wonder what else is going on. And then they started eventually this big study to ask questions about abuse and neglect and violence and things like that. Yeah.
Well, that'll be something to look into for everyone, I believe,
Yes.
myself included.
It's been called, the biggest healthcare crisis that we have, really, if you think about it. And it's of great concern to me now, with all the pressures that we face with COVID and everything else going on, that it's been hard on families. It's hard, really hard on children. So
Yeah.
we have a lot to pray about and a lot to be sensitive about, a lot of work to do.
Yes, yes. And it's very important, like what you just said right now, it's important for us to take the actions that we need. We have to tighten our relationship with God, pray as much as we can. And what you said when you were talking about the adverse childhood event is you're talking about, you also taking that small steps, basically, like you saw a psychotherapist, while you were writing the book also. So can you tell us like some lessons that you learned from the psychotherapist, and how did it help you to let go of the need to work hard, or the need to
Oh, that
become
was,
much more
yeah,
emotionally healthy? Yeah.
that
Yes,
was
please.
interesting, because as an adult, probably my daughters had said in the years past about seeing a therapist or something. And I go, ugh, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to stir up trouble? I would never want to do that. I said that repeatedly, Toby. But the reason I knew I needed to see a psychotherapist was as I was trying to write my memoirs, I read my old diaries, which I hadn't really read for years. And I was flabbergasted to see that my memory of my childhood and teens and years was very different from what I wrote down.
Mm.
And it was like, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, yeah.
And so when you see a psychotherapist, it's not a cognitive process. Are you going to think this through and make a list and solve it?
Mm.
So so it was hard to try and make yourself open to painful memories or to the things that you wished you had not done but you did do. Like, for example, I did the best I could. I worked really hard as a mother, and I loved my girls and they know I love them, but it was messed up because I think I was I was it was in the seeing the psychotherapist where I really came to understand this drive to work, which I still have to battle with. It's hard for me to relax.
Yeah.
Um, I mentioned I remarried. I think I re-mentioned that.
Yes,
And
yes, you did.
anyway, my husband is so able to relax. I mean, he could just sit there and listen to music or watch the birds. And I'm like, wow. I mean, that's like foreign to me. So that was one thing I learned, because it's fine to work hard. There's a lot of rewards, right? But not when you sacrifice health and family and children and relationships. It's got to be a balance. And I didn't understand that. I didn't see that in myself at all
Yeah,
um, until going through this process.
yeah.
And the other thing I never understood very well was how I had a lifetime pattern of not speaking up when I should have spoken up. And I talk about this in my book a lot, because as I wrote down experiences in my marriage, it's like, geez, Donna, why did why did you say something? Why didn't And even from the very beginning, when I I said I would marry him 6 weeks after I met him, well, that was kind of stupid. I knew that was too quick
Mm,
to commit.
mm.
But I got my ring. I mean, so there was a lot of stuff like that that I came to see. I had these, like, I think we all do, an automatic way we commonly react to something. And my
Yeah.
automatic way is to pick a path that would not offend anybody. There'd be no confrontation or conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Yeah.
that's a really crummy way. You
Yeah.
know, the um the therapist often talked about, what did she say about, in a relationship, if you can't be honest, it's not much of a relationship,
Mm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. You're right.
One thing she said that I think of regularly, and it had to do with what she calls anxiety. It's not, think of if there's some stressful circumstance happening, maybe it was an angry patient, or maybe when I was younger, a child getting upset or anything, right? I would have a choice. Ideally, I would have a choice of how I would react, right? One is to feel that tension, to get upset myself, because that's what we do. We react. And before I learned this, my God-centered mindfulness, I reacted quicker and more. But that anxiety, that reaction, that feeling that you're gonna, when you feel like a fight might start or a disagreement, but you haven't really said anything, but you feel it all inside you. So my therapist always said, never underestimate the power of a non-anxious person, meaning non-reactive, calm. So like a doctor who doesn't let the patient get under their skin, a teacher who is very calm with the unruly student. If they choosing that calm approach deflates the situation. If the teacher or the doctor or whomever, the brother, the sister, the husband, the wife, gets upset themselves, it just spirals more. I mean, I just think that's a really powerful thing, and that's where the mindfulness comes in. So if you start to feel it rising up, you have to have some way to pull yourself back to the present moment, to take a breath. If you don't like to say a prayer, maybe your mindfulness thing can be to take 3 breaths when you start to feel that tension coming. Do you have that happen to you? I can't be the only one.
Yeah, a lot of times, That's even one of my prayers too. Like, I always pray to God to help me not to react, but to respond properly. Like, to me, that made more sense right now when you talked about being that non-reactive person. Because I
Right.
wrote that down and I was asked the question that, what do you mean not react? And I was like, yeah, I just got that inspiration not to pray, not to be a reactive person, but to respond properly to a
Exactly. That's
situation.
it. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the goal, to thoughtfully, mindfully respond
Yes.
instead of reacting. And a lot of worldwide problems and marriage and every kind of problem would be better off. And raising children.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it could be difficult. It's a big challenge. It could be difficult, but once we're able to be mindful, like you said, and be calm, basically, I think that comes also from what you talked about, meditation and centering praying and
Yes.
prayers. For example, you need to be centered, basically, and whenever any storm of life comes your way, you just be calm. I know that Jesus is on your boat, basically.
Exactly. Exactly. That's a nice way to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yes.
I
Yes.
think the whole thing does kind of translate into trying to respond rather than react to stressful circumstances. And we could all change relationships, change families. This therapist that I saw worked in something called family systems therapy. So it was getting at how relationship difficulties and stuff, it comes from families, and it's passed down in families. And um, that's where this, and when you have a long history of relationship challenges with somebody, whether it be a spouse or family member or sibling or whatever, you're triggered. You react before you even, because you just think something's going to get said. And so recognizing those triggers, or trying to recognize them before they get full blown.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very important. Yeah. Recognize those triggers, and whenever you sense them coming your way, just touch them.
Right.
Yeah.
Do your
Respond them
breathing, say
properly.
your prayer, whatever you can come up with.
Yes. That's awesome. I believe in this way, in this sense, also one will be able to have a very healthy life, a holy life, and also happy life. If one could do this.
Yes. Yeah.
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 Oh man, I've learned so much from you, Donna. I mean, this is such a wonderful conversation. I was listening to you talk, and I could just relate basically to everything you were saying. Most of the things you were saying. I mean, you experienced a lot more than I've experienced in my little years so far, but I could relate to some of the things, and attaching everything back to your relationship with God also is very relatable to me too. And I just want you to let us know the best way to connect and work with you. I'm sure there are people out there who are listening so far who would love to work with you, get the book, maybe ask you some further questions that we're not able to ask. What is the best way to do all of this?
All right. Yeah, I'd be happy to hear from anyone. So I'll give you my email for the show notes. My and you could also contact me directly through my website, which is serenityandhealth.com. 3 words with the AND spelled out. Serenityandhealth.com. And that's a place where you can sign up for my monthly blog where I talk about all these kind of topics. That's where I wrote originally the pieces about ACEs because I think they're really important. And I have information about my book also on my blog, and I'll give you that, Toby, for the show notes. The book is Pilgrimage, a Doctor's Healing Journey. And I put a lot of crap out there about my life, folks. But the process helped me tremendously. And as I then described the healing and the recovery and trying to put the whole mind body thing together, what I learned myself, I could more articulate it for others. And that's why I wrote the book. And so
Yeah.
I'd love it if you would read it and let me know what you think. But it's
Yes.
available at Amazon and Barnes and Nobles.
Barnes and Nobles too. Yes. The link will be in the show notes of the episode. To encourage everyone to click on the link to buy the book, to get across to Donna. Also, in case of questions, inquiries, or feedback, please let's engage. And thank you so much, Donna. I mean, if there's a last word you could share with us, like a closing remark for someone who is there, stuck in a very unhealthy life or unhappy life and wants to liberate and become much more happier and healthy, what would be that advice or that closing remark for such a person?
Well, I think the most important thing is to turn to God because then you'll have hope. But then never forget that to see a change, you will have to make a change. And it has to start very small or else you will fail on this journey. So just start with whatever small thing you think will make you feel better. And because our mind, body, and spirit is all connected, it doesn't matter where you start. Maybe you want to do a different kind of prayer. Maybe you want to start walking 3 times a week. Maybe it's finally time for you to change your diet. And I always encourage people to not make it complicated. Don't make things complicated. Start with something little. Maybe you drink too much. Maybe you drink soda all the time. Just cut that in half or alternate 1 soda with 1 water for the first week and reevaluate each week how you're doing it. You have to keep at it. In terms of eating, I often recommend as a way to start is to count up how many servings of fruits and vegetables that you eat each day. And you don't have to get real complicated about it. 1 small serving of a vegetable or 1 piece of fruit. And we don't eat enough fruits and vegetables. I don't know what kind of a diet you have, but in general, it's very easy to eat a normal American diet and end up with a count of 2 or 3. And 5 or 6 is a minimum of servings of fruits and vegetables. So that's a fun thing. You could, if you really have low numbers, you could start with 4 and then build up. So make a change, a small change, and then monitor yourself every week. And it's great to do that as part of your prayer. As part of your prayer, maybe on Sunday when you think about God more, if you attend church or not, doesn't matter. So that's how I would
That's true.
say.
Oh, thank you so much, Donna. I really appreciate this. This was such a life-changing conversation I had with you. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us, and thank you so much for being so open with everything you've experienced and using this also to change the world. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
Oh, I'm really happy. I've enjoyed meeting you. I'll be fun to stay in touch, Toby, and see all this wisdom you're getting. What you're going to do. You're so young. You have decades ahead. It's going to be great
Yeah.
to see. Maybe you'll
Thank you
change the
so much.
world.
I hope so. I hope so. I hope so. That's my prayer. I hope so.
I think you are. I think you are.
Thank you so much.
Wow, you made it to the very end of this episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'm grateful for your time, your love, and your contributions. Subscribe, like, review, and share this podcast. God bless you. Bye.